Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by to the weekly Wednesday night live stream. Hope everyone's doing well. Uh, Things are good here. Brianna's out of town tonight. She has a meeting in Toronto with her union, so she won't be joining us tonight. But she sends her best wishes, and I know you guys will all miss her tonight as the co-host. We got lots to talk about tonight. I might end a little early. I'm feeling a little tired. Again, I've been on full childcare duty today and trying to balance that with making videos. So we'll go as long as we can, but we might finish a little bit earlier than the 10:30 Eastern we normally go to. But we'll keep open with that. Lots of comments and discussion already, which I love to see. A lot of people asking questions about this. Samantha Sider with the super chat. Again, thank you for the support, Samantha, saying, fair to classify Trump as the F word, by which she means fascist. I mean, look, I've always been torn about this word, not out of a desire to defend Trump by any means, right? But more out of a desire to... more out of a desire to understand that what we were seeing out of the Trump regime was possible and has been historically done under what you might call otherwise liberal democratic capitalist regimes. And so when I said, I don't know if it's fair to classify Donald Trump as a fascist, that wasn't even always me saying Donald Trump is too nice or too democratic to be a fascist, but more fascism is a particular formation of the state and of its relationship to capital. And so while I think Donald Trump is a white nationalist, I think he's a white supremacist, I think there are elements of Donald Trump's regimes that are at least fascist adjacent, there's a marked difference between what fascism was in the 1930s in Germany, even in the early years, and what we're seeing now. And that doesn't mean this isn't necessarily fascist, but it does mean that the word fascism doesn't have necessarily one ironclad definition. Because again, I noted in my brief video, and thanks for everyone for all the welcomes here. As some people often remind you, click the like button if you want to help get people to the stream. Let me know how you're doing in the comments. But one of the things I noted in that video very briefly, the one I did on the ICE detention facilities, and that's been covered a lot more since I made that video. Chris Hayes, to his credit, did a very good segment on MSNBC where he interviewed the nurse that blew the whistle on this. Pramila Jayapal, Rashida Tlaib, AOC, a lot of the progressive congresswomen have been looking into this story and have been finding more and more horrors about it. The original story had, half a dozen or so women, but now there may be many times that, 2-3 times that, and I'm guessing there's even far more than that who have been affected by what's happening in the ICE facilities. And I think honestly, what we're seeing is something rooted in American history. Right? It's something rooted in American history. That's why it's how could he not be a fascist? Well, was Thomas Jefferson a fascist? Because you could check the boxes. Dehumanization of racial others, denying the people to vote based on perceived characteristics or real characteristics. Donald Trump wants to stop black people from voting. Thomas Jefferson stopped black people from voting. Thomas Jefferson envisioned a racial hierarchy where white men were at the top. Donald Trump envisions a racial and gendered hierarchy where white men are at the top. Fundamentally, both of them believed in white nationalist, white supremacist, anti-democratic beliefs, and yet I would not call those things alone fascist. because they are rooted in the values of American liberal democracy. And so when I try to avoid calling someone like Trump a fascist, and I'm not saying it's invalid, but when I personally do that, I don't do it to defend Trump. I do it to condemn liberal democratic capitalism, which in many ways has the same sort of flaws fascism does. Like, for instance, here in Canada, we still sterilize Indigenous women, like we're hearing in the ICE facilities, without their knowledge or consent in some cases, in many cases. And why do we do that disproportionately to Indigenous women? Because it's rooted in genocide against Indigenous people. Right? Right? It's rooted in genocide against Indigenous people. Was Canada fascist when we did that? Is Sir John A. Macdonald a fascist, or was he just a white nationalist, white supremacist, liberal democratic capitalist? And it just leads to some of the same things fascism leads to. Right? And so, like, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Is Trump a fascist? I mean, I don't know. He certainly is anti-democratic. But does having an anti-democratic society make you a fascist? I don't know. Are traditional monarchists fascist? I don't know. Right? I don't think so. I think there's a difference between the different strands of anti-democratic tendency. I don't think all of the US-backed regimes in Latin America were fascist. They were all right-wing. They were all anti-democratic. But they, in some cases, were experimentations in bourgeois neoliberal dictatorships, not necessarily fascism, right? Fascism is not just a stand-in for thing I don't like, right? You can have societies that are, put another way, not all fingers are thumbs, but all thumbs are fingers. That analogy. It's like, not all fascisms are bad, but not all bad things are fascism. So I don't know. That's why I'm torn. I certainly think it's a crime against humanity, but again, like, was Canada, when we locked up Indigenous children and we're sterilizing women and we're starving Indigenous people and murdering workers for their right to bargain collectively, were we fascist? Was Canada fascist in 1919? Were we a fascist society? We have to use that term. We have to answer that. Was Canada fascist in 1919? Was the United States fascist in the 1920s? And if so, was every society fascist? Every Western society fascist? Any society where people of color were systematically dehumanized, often denied access to democracy, were we fascist? And that's where I get to this difficulty here, right? I don't know. And maybe I'm splitting hairs. People are saying they're getting lag, but I'm not getting it. And I seem to be the stream seems to be pretty good on my end. Maybe I'm getting it in real time, but we'll see. Let me know if that lag keeps continuing. We seem to be getting a good bit rate, so let me know. So that's where I'm torn. That's where I'm torn. But no, I mean, I certainly think it is Donald Trump is the biggest threat to American democracy since World War II. In terms of you could pick an individual president. That I think is fair. 100%. Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. So whether we want to call that fascist or not, like, we can have that discussion, but I think he is a huge threat to democracy. Like, George W. Bush was bad, but he wasn't as big a threat to democracy, right? He was a threat to the world in a lot of ways, but, Bill Clinton, awful, not a threat to democracy. Barack Obama, not a threat to democracy. And that's where I think we could all, agree on. That Donald Trump is a relatively high-level threat to democracy in a Western nation that we don't see all the time. Like we don't see leaders like this in Western countries very often. Like, compare him to Bush, or even compare him to Stephen Harper when he was prime minister, or compare him to, any random conservative that might lead an EU country. I don't view them as a threat to democracy in the same way. Yeah, I understand in a sense, but is it the same kind of threat Trump is? I don't know. I think Trump is somewhat, if not unique, if not a total departure from U.S. history, then an intensification beyond levels we're used to seeing. See, then again, that raises an interesting question, as people are noting. Bush is a war criminal. Obama stomped on our rights. Bill Clinton stomped on our rights. If Trump is just an extension of those guys, were they fascists too? Was Obama a fascist? And this is where it gets us into an interesting discussion. What is the fascism of Trump, and what is just a logical extension of American liberal democratic capitalism, which is not fascist? Right? Again, fascist is not thing I don't like. Fascism is a particular political formation, which includes a good amount of the things Donald Trump is doing, but it's also including a lot of things Trump isn't doing, at least not yet. So, and then there's another question too. Like, do you believe Trump in his heart is a fascist? And see, that's a different question. And maybe a more difficult one to answer in some ways, maybe easier in others. Because you could make the case, and I don't think this is unreasonable, that Donald Trump is a fascist, but that even with the lack of a spine in the Republican Party, the realities of the U.S. system, at least in the short term, prevent someone from being an out-and-out fascist. Right? Like an out-and-out fascist, right? Does Donald Trump have the desire to be one, but not necessarily the ability to be one? I mean, one thing we need to see, for instance, is a much greater imposition of like state capitalism in a way we don't really see under in the American system. Like a fascist would still be capitalist, but wouldn't they be marshaling state energies more to like serve the race? Wouldn't there be more nationalizations? Wouldn't there be more official cooperations between state and capital? It just seems to me that like when Trump came to power, his primary economic vision, was a few tariffs here and there, but it was mostly just tax cuts for the rich. Like, there was no vision to, like, reform the economy to serve the nation. And when I mean the nation, I don't necessarily mean the United States, I mean white people, like the white Aryan American nation. There wasn't that move. Capital wasn't subverted. Some people have been calling for Trump to basically take over Facebook, Twitter, things like that, because they're fake news. Like Roger Stone. I think Roger Stone was making calls to fascism. Has Trump, not tried to take over those companies? Banning TikTok isn't necessarily fascist, right? Because again, there are countries that ban external media. Doesn't necessarily make them fascist. There are certain countries that like in our hemisphere, otherwise good countries, that don't let all news sources in. Doesn't make them fascist, right? Well, yes, Craig, that's a good point, but don't forget the United States, for much of its history, has had privatized prisons. Literally a prison industrial complex that, in a way, Canada doesn't even have. Is that not fascist? And if so, why are these facilities different? Again, this was a country in which people were owned, and it was celebrated as something that made America what it was. Yet, when slaves were owned, it was not fascism. Again, fascism is different than fundamental white supremacy and white nationalism. It's not just we dehumanize and even kill minorities. That on its own is not fascism. You could have something like that without it being fascist, right? Again, when Canada murdered Indigenous people and stole their land, no reasonable definition of that society could be classified as fascist. It was a purely small L liberal society genociding people by the millions. In Canada, the United States, Mexico, all the settler colonial societies, none of which, maybe with the exception of South Africa in a lot of ways, were fascist. The British government in India was not fascist. It was purely and unequivocally capitalist in a liberal sense. And so that's why I'm a little wary of that. And again, I'm not saying don't call Donald Trump fascist, and I'm not saying that every time I read a story I get closer and closer to that definition. It's just, to me, I don't know. To me, I have a hard time separating just plain old American racism from this. And you know what I mean? I don't know. Again, Abraham Lincoln wanted to free the slaves, yes, but he either wanted them to never have the right to vote or to basically exodus all black people back to Africa. Would you not call that fascist if it was happening today? Maybe, but Abraham Lincoln was not a fascist. He was a liberal, democratic, white supremacist, white nationalist capitalist that just happened to believe that slavery in particular was wrong. But it doesn't make him a fascist. See, so we got some super chats here. Justin Frederick says, unfiltered thoughts on Caitlin Bennett. That's the girl that carries the gun around everywhere, just to make sure, right? Like, I honestly, I don't think too much about her. Like, I've seen a lot of videos of her going to campuses and just pissing off students. Like, whether, I know that she did a video, this week where she basically did that, and she also did a video of, before COVID. There was some story about how, I don't even know. My view is, obviously, she's an idiot. Obviously, she's, like an attention sponge. She just tries to like rile people up. She's very much a female Steven Crowder in that way. Like she goes to places to try to make people angry and then like gets offended by like invading their space, gets offended when those people respond, tries to act like the victim when, you know, they're the perpetrator. And it has the additional effect because she's like a white woman. She will like, on the one hand, like, you know, say like, oh, there's no sexism in our society. And then just absolutely try to like trade on her white femininity whenever possible. Yeah, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan, but I actually don't talk. I don't do too much coverage on her. I don't know if I've ever done a video on her. Maybe I have, but I don't think I have. Whereas I've done videos on other people like Ben Shapiro and stuff, and Candace Owens and what have you. The Serfs, and go check out the Serfs on Twitch and it's related to Lisa's question, which I'll get to. But they really go into her at least a few times, I think. Yeah, I mean, I assume Dafrax is like her husband's a white now. Yeah, that doesn't really surprise me. That doesn't really surprise me that Caitlin Bennett's husband is a white nationalist. I mean, maybe it would surprise me if he was like a Black Lives Matter leader. I know you can't help who you fall in love with sometimes, but that would be shocking to me. That would be shocking. Lisa, or Wendy Melly, sends a pear flying through the air as if they were like a super pear. I guess that really puts a new spin on superfoods, right? And I think it's extra fitting because the wind is blowing and it references Wendy Melly's name. And then Lisa says, Christo, will you be streaming / collaborating on Twitch? I noticed some of the lefty streamers keep mentioning your videos. Well, that's great to hear. I'm happy to see that. I know the Serfs, have showcased my videos every now and then. I don't know of anybody else, actually. So that's super good to hear. I'm happy to hear that. I want to do more on Twitch, and I want to do more streaming in general. I basically want to do more of everything, but what we're thinking right now, as a family, is that our daycare has opened, and Demetrios can go back, but we're giving it a little bit of time, just to stay safe. And we're going to reevaluate near the end of the month. Brianna and Demetrios are going to go visit her family next week. I'll be here. I'll be, making videos as per usual. It'll be a rare week where I can put a full, undivided work day in. But in general, I have to be the primary child care person during the day because Brianna does work from home, but she has a more traditional job. Whereas I have more flexibility. So I'm doing my best to make YouTube work, and some days it's difficult for me to make 2 short videos, and I don't have enough time to stream. And I certainly can't stream at all except for after he's in bed because, Demetrios can be quiet, or Brianna can take him upstairs for 10, 15, 20 minutes, but he can't really be quiet and go without attention and whatnot for 2 hours or an hour or 3 hours, especially with regularity. So, I want to do more. I want to do more of a lot of things, but until I can carve out more time in the week, I think I just have to focus on, my existing workload. 1 to 3 videos a day on YouTube, my weekly stream. Maybe when I have spare time here and there, I can do a little bit more than that, but I don't want to commit to anything. So it is something I want to do. It's like I want to do more writing as well. Like I want to do more writing for Canadian publications, American publications. I want to do more writing, but it's just writing also requires like a good amount of time that's free. So $27. I'll certainly take a look for that, Lisa. Thank you so much for letting me know. Lisa's always great for that. She'll always be like, somebody mentioned you in this stream, and I really like to hear that. So thank you so much. Yeah, maybe Macy, maybe CMT, maybe you're right. Maybe neo-fascism is the way to go with it. Maybe I'm stuck of thinking of fascism in the 1930s variety. Like, because that's what we think of. Because when we think of, like, regimes that were fascist, like, undeniably, like Nazi Germany, Mussolini and Hitler, Franco in Spain, Salazar in Portugal, they were almost all formed in the 20s and 30s. And some of them, the ones that were involved in the war, collapsed by 1945. And then, you know, some of the other ones that stayed neutral were able to survive into the 60s, 70s, whatever. And they were fascist. There's no doubt about that. But fascism sort of went away as like a force that was ruling governments. And now maybe you're right. Maybe we have to think of fascism in 2020, in the 21st century, as different than 100 years ago. And that's a fair point. And I think if you make that argument, that Donald Trump embodies what might be a new formation of fascism, which is different than the old one in some ways and not in others, then I think that's a much more fruitful discussion. And I think that's where some people, maybe myself, but I think others get caught as well, where they basically say it's fascist and they're looking clearly to Nazi Germany. But I think there's very big distinctions between Nazi Germany and between like 2020's America. You know, but I definitely think links can be made. I've talked about it. Definitely links can be made. What inspired Nazi Germany was America's Jim Crow system. Nazis looked to the United States and how they built systems of rigid racial hierarchy, and they imported that to Germany, to how to classify Jews and other people. In some ways, the American system was actually more rigid than the German one. Like the American system of like one drop for blackness, I've talked about this before, was deemed too rigid. And that's why the German system, people because there were a lot of Jews in Germany, lots of people could have verifiable Jewish ancestry, but if it was diluted enough, you were deemed acceptable at least. And so you could draw those links, but maybe that's a better way to think about it. And Cornel West is somebody I certainly have a great deal of respect for. And neither him or I are necessarily experts in our academic studies on the history of fascism per se. But I certainly give him credence when he says that. And I do think there's merits to say that, like, in opposing Trump, you're opposing fascism. Even if you don't think it's fascism yet, you're exposing what you feel is an evolution towards it, I think is a reasonable claim as well. Bob asks me how I think about Crusader Kings 3. I think it's great. For those who don't know, Crusader Kings is a video game. It's a new game, which it's a you play as a country or as a political body. I'll step back. You play as a noble or a royal in anywhere from the 8 to the 1400s, depending on when you start the game. And your goal is to expand your kingdom and make your dynasty rich and famous. And it's sort of interesting because unlike a game like, let's say, Civilizations, where you play as the country, like if you play as Greece, you're always Alexander the Great. Like you don't, like he just is a god floating above the society, right? Or you play as Gandhi, or you play as George Washington. In this game, you play as an individual royal, and when that royal dies, their child takes over. And the only way you get a game over isn't if you lose a war, and it isn't if you lose pretty much all your territory. It's when you don't have a child of your dynasty to go to. When all your titles are lost to another dynasty, then you lose. So the goal is to simultaneously represent a polity like I play often in Byzantium, in the Eastern Rome. And, yeah, your goal is to expand Byzantium, but it's also to ensure that your children and great-grandchildren, play like that. And so it's a mixture of a role-playing game and a grand strategy game. It's super fun. I played as Byzantium, and it was very easy. I think one of the challenges of playing as the Eastern Roman Empire in Crusader Kings 2 was that you were clearly one of the most powerful, especially if you started early. You were clearly one of the most powerful societies in the game, maybe the most. You didn't necessarily have the biggest army, but you were the most technologically advanced society in the game. You had the greatest wealth. You had a lot of land that you could conquer. Like you had the claims to conquer so much land. But the challenge was that you had a lot of internal strife. There were always people that wanted to steal your throne from you, which is very much like the history of Rome, both the Constantinople Rome, but also and Rome in Italy, and so they sort of really downplay the internal rebellion when you play as Byzantium. So the game actually is quite easy. So I'm still playing through my first game, but I've basically conquered the entirety of Eastern Europe, much of France and Spain. It's a little too easy right now as Byzantium, and I think patches will take care of that. But it's extremely fun, and I would say if you ever tried to play Crusader Kings 2, if you've ever tried to play it and found it kind of hard to get into, which a lot of people did, give Crusader Kings 3 a try, because I feel it's a little bit more accessible. Not necessarily, and I'm not using that as a double-handed thing where I think it's dumbed down, because I don't think it is. But the game is more accessible. So I like it. I certainly don't regret buying it. And I'll get a lot of fun out of it over the years to come. I mean, how many kids? I mean, I would say, well, the current, it varies from child to child, because you play through hundreds of years, but, anywhere from a few to, sometimes you have, if you get an emperor who lives to be a long time, you can have a lot of children, especially if they outlive their wife, because you can remarry and then you have another childbearing age wife. The game is, not necessarily what we would see as kosher right now, but you get married at 16 in the game, basically, most of the time. And then if you live to, say, 40 and your wife passes away, well, then you marry another 16-year-old to maximize the number of childbearing years. It's not an easy game to talk about just out of context, because people will think you're weird. But yeah, that's you can have a lot of children in that game. And one thing with when you play as Greek Orthodox is you got to be monogamous. But there are certain religions and certain cultures in the game that don't require monogamy, so you can have multiple wives and therefore multiple children. Oh, everyone's seeing Smokey. Yes, he's down in the corner. I don't know if it has a Linux version or not, or a Linux version. I'm not sure. Somebody asked about Kate Grogin and in New Brunswick. I mean, look, the New Brunswick NDP. It was disappointing. I mean, they weren't gonna win. I thought it would be a miracle for them to win a seat. Honestly, the leader Mackenzie did very good in the debates. From what I saw and from what I heard, he might have been the best on the stage. But New Brunswick just has never really connected with the NDP. It's a very conservative province in a lot of ways. And so it's not surprising that two of the more conservative provinces historically have no NDP representation and have sort of chosen the Green Party as their leftist party, which is New Brunswick and PEI. Now you might say, well, Alberta and Saskatchewan are more conservative. Well, now they are, but they weren't always. Both of those provinces have had radical histories. New Brunswick and PEI have sort of always been conservative provinces. Alberta used to be the most left-wing province, and for a time so was Saskatchewan. Now they're not. Yeah, it's disappointing. Although, like, as people noted, there were Grogan she did really good. She did really good. She got 6% of the vote, which again is terrible in the grand scheme. Like, if 6% is nothing to cry, like to brag about, but it was triple basically province wide, and she, I believe, did very similarly to the Green candidate in her riding, and ran a good result. And I think that, going forward, maybe she could be the leader of the party. I don't know. It would be very interesting to see. This is nothing against Mackenzie, but he was sort of thrown into it. He was supposed to be interim leader of the New Brunswick NDP. And then because of the snap election and because of COVID and them having a hard time, organizing the party, he got stuck with the job. And I don't necessarily think a new leader would have made that big a difference, especially not unless they found like some kind of superstar. I gotta just fix this for a second, guys. But it's definitely something that I've noticed being an issue. So I'm just gonna fumble with this, and then we're gonna try to fix this while I'm talking. Now this is gonna be a test. How many Christos does it take to screw a screw? And it's gonna be, all right. 1 second. Yeah. Okay. So how's everybody doing? At least can you guys still hear me? Can you still hear me? Yeah. I just gotta loosen this a little bit. I might need 2 mics then, Christo. Yeah, maybe so. Yeah, at least you guys can hear me. I'm just trying to get this fixed here. I don't know how that happened, but I gotta loosen this a little bit. All right, while I'm trying to do this. So, how's everybody doing? Yeah, I don't know why that's happening. I get a live feed version of the feed right here on my own, and I haven't been seeing that on my end. So I don't know what would be causing that. I don't know if that's something on the internet. I don't know if that's YouTube trying to silence me. France makes a great point, says Dawn Wooten, my hero. Yes, Dawn Wooten was very brave. Very brave to make that stand. Very brave. Leslie says, I think fascism is starting to be a red herring. It's not just Trump, it's the American government. Leslie, thank you for that comment, and thank you for the support. I mean, I don't know if I would go that far. It's like, I think one thing to note is that, yeah, Trump is bad, but I don't think Trumpism is necessarily going anywhere. So even if you think like the way Trump operates has led to this moment, right? Has led to this moment. I don't think it's going to go away. So I don't know if I would agree that fascism is a quote-unquote red herring, but I do think this all-encompassing obsession with Trump is a bit of a red herring. Because, let's think about this. Like, Trump loses. Biden's going to be an awful president. I think we can all agree. It's going to be better than Trump, but he's going to be awful. He's going to be an awful president. And he's going to piss off the so many people. So many people. And my view is that we're going to get like Tom Cotton. It's going to be Tom Cotton 2024. right? Right? It's going to be 2024. Brennan, like, look, yes, Obama built the cages, but he used them in a different fashion, and Trump has extended their use. He has not taken them away. You're just lying, man. Like, I got no patience for that. Yeah, by all means, criticize Obama. Criticize Obama. But, like, Trump has not gotten rid of the child cages. He just hasn't. He hasn't. So, I do think that you could have a scenario where you get somebody even worse than Trump in 2024 or 2028 or whatever. And that, like, Trump, like, defeating Trump is not necessarily going to defeat whatever's happening on the American right. Whether you call it fascism or whatever else, it might not go away just on its own. Like, that's not necessarily going to happen. Jay's asking if I think Markey should run in 2024. I mean, that's an interesting question. I think one challenge for the left is gonna be what's the context of the run? Like, what's the context of the run? Like, for instance, are we looking at okay, there's a couple scenarios here. One, Biden loses, which is awful. Which is awful. And I don't want that. But what that would likely mean is an open primary in 2024. And that means anyone can run and have a shot, hypothetically. If Biden wins, however, I do think that he's not going to seek a second term. I think he would be a one and done president because, of his age and whatnot. Right? And so the question is going to be, if it's the second, and let's say it's Kamala Harris, then she is going to really have the inside track. And I don't support her by any means, but it's going to be hard to beat Kamala Harris if she's the sitting vice president and she, steps in for Biden. It won't be quite as much a coronation as when a first-term president runs for re-election. And basically, if they get primaried, it's by no one that matters. Like, Trump faced primaries this time, right? He did, right? There was primaries against Trump. But the fact of the matter is he won them easily, right? In many cases, they couldn't get it, like, he would get like 95% of the vote or whatever it was, maybe more, right? And so my fear is you don't want somebody burning one of their chances to run in that context. And so maybe AOC running in 2024 makes more sense in the context of it being an open primary, whereas there might have been a little lag spike right there. I'm not sure. We'll have to keep an eye out for that. Whereas somebody who's a bit older, a bit more speculative, who can run on. Okay, we are back. Sorry about that, guys. I had to reset the stream. It was not working. Sorry about that. And while that was happening, I also was able to fix my mic. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, most of you left, but a good amount of people stayed. Justin Frederick said, Here's a second super chat for a new microphone stand who's with me. We might not need that yet, Justin, but we'll put it in the bank just in case. Okay, sorry about that, guys. I had to reset my internet and then also reset my streaming software. That happens every once in a while. Honestly, I don't know what causes it. We have pretty good internet here. Like, I normally run at about, and I think I cap it, but like I normally run at about 8,000 kilobytes a second, which is actually more than YouTube recommends for a stream. And so normally it's fine, but then for some reason, every once in a while, it just tanks. So when people are asking, like, running, like, let me give this a more full answer because I was distracted by the internet and all that. So basically, and if you're not seeing it, maybe refresh the stream. So check that out. And somebody asked, I saw in the comments, why does this guy have a following? Man, if I knew that, I would tell you. I don't know either sometimes. But people seem to at least be okay with me. And I'm grateful every day. So, 2024, with the Democrats having lost in 2020, it's open season. Anybody can run. And yeah, I'd like to see somebody progressive run. Maybe more than one person, but at the very least, I'd like someone like Rashida Tlaib, Nina Turner, to consider running. You might see someone like Ed Markey run. I would have never thought that before, but he seems to have built a lot of goodwill on the left by beating Kennedy and building that movement. You're going to see Warren run again. You're going to see Warren run 100%. I think she's going to run, especially if it's open. She'll be about the same age Bernie is now in 4 years. She's a few years younger than Bernie. I think she might be more than a few years. So she'll be younger than Bernie is now, so she won't be too old. And I know a lot of the left won't support her given what she's done, but she might be one of the more left-leaning people running. Justin says James Carville / Neera Tanden in 2024. Justin, you're killing me. You're killing me. My God, that's the only thing that's even worse than the rumored Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg 2024, which just stabbed me in the heart. We'll never be able to afford bread ever again. So yeah, Warren's definitely running. Warren's definitely running, I think, in that case. But here's the thing. In an alternative scenario where, again, Harris and Biden serve together, and you know, she's got no major scandals. She was a perfectly serviceable vice president, which I could see. I could see Kamala Harris not messing up too badly as vice president. And then she, you know, Biden retires, and then in 2024 comes up, and basically he pushes her forward as his successor, for lack of a better term. I could see most people just not bothering to challenge her. I could see a lot of people say, I'm out. You know, she's the sitting vice president. She represents marginalized groups. The optics of challenging her look bad. I could see a lot of people sitting out. Now, that's an opportunity for the left, maybe, in the sense that the only kind of person that would challenge Kamala Harris, if she was the sitting vice president, would be someone on the left. Maybe you'll get like a really like a conservative Democrat to run, saying, "Oh, the Biden-Harris administration has gone too far left." You know, as if, right? But like, you might see that. But I think it'll end up being a situation where you might have a Clinton-Bernie scenario where you have somebody that's the whole party is behind, and then like one challenger to unite everyone that isn't with the establishment. And so that could be a moment for someone like AOC or what have you. But do you burn a run if you're AOC in 2024 if it's against Harris and you know that it's going to be hard to beat her? It's going to be hard to beat her. Right? Like, you know what I mean? It's going to be difficult. It's going to be really difficult. And so maybe it's like an older person, like a Markey, who, like, this is their last shot anyway. They might as well swing for the fences, promote, the Green New Deal and other progressive issues, and then hope you win, but it's not a huge deal if you don't. Maybe that's what we're looking at. Nina Turner running, she said she's interested. She hasn't committed, but she said on the Young Turks last week, maybe, I think it was last week, where, like, Cenk asked her, and he was like, hey, are you looking at running? And she was like, I'm looking into it. So it would not surprise me if she did run. It would not surprise me. But I'm not sure that she's necessarily locked into it either. I'm not sure she's necessarily locked in either. It's definitely something to consider. I would think it'd be very cool for Nina to run, but one of the challenges for Nina is going to be that she's never really held a national office. She's been a state officer, but that was a while ago, right? It's been a while since she was a state senator in Ohio, and I don't believe she won re-election. And so the challenge for Nina is going to be, like, building that movement without that. Again, as much as we say about Bernie Sanders, Bernie had a very established political career. He was a mayor, and then a congressman, and then a senator before he ran for president for like 30 years. So that's going to be a challenge for her. I mean, I think that the better move for AOC may be, just like, if you're thinking for her, like, not necessarily what the country needs, but if I'm thinking for AOC, maybe it's better for her to run for Senate, to primary Chuck Schumer. He's afraid of it, right? Like we know Chuck Schumer is afraid of her. I've talked about this before. Look at all the votes Chuck Schumer has been casting. He voted with the progressive senators, like Bernie and whatnot, for the 10% Pentagon cut. He voted against the new NAFTA. He voted, I think, there was another big one where he voted with the progressives. I forget which one. And he's doing that because, one, on all of those bills, he knew they would fail anyway. So, his vote was basically meaningless. The Republicans were against them. And then you add the Republicans and the moderate Democrats. They're like 70 of the congressmen, right? Maybe more. And so he can do that without consequence, but he's afraid. And he wants to have in his back pocket the idea that he's voted for... he wants to have in his back pocket that he's voted for these progressive bills, or voted against regressive ones, because he worries about AOC. So that's I don't know. I'm not sure what's going to happen. Yeah, I think Rashida Tlaib running would be really cool, though. I think Rashida Tlaib doesn't get as much attention as AOC, but she might even have better politics in a lot of ways. And maybe because she's lower profile, maybe it's less of a risk because she's not, like, that would be her one shot. Like, maybe AOC needs to bide her time because we need her to run in 2028. Whereas, like, you need someone to be the progressive placeholder in 2024. But maybe you want somebody that's strong, but not necessarily going to seriously run for president. I don't know. I don't know what your theory is. AOC could be president in 2024. She'll literally, like, she turned 35 in October of that year, I believe. And you have to be 35 by election day, I believe. So for most of the contest, she won't be old enough, like when she's running in the primaries and stuff, but she will be old enough when she will be old enough on election day to run for president, and therefore could be VP in 2024. Somebody could make her VP in 2024 if they wanted. Like if Kamala Harris really feared the left, what if she made AOC her VP? I don't know, right? But yeah, she's too young now. She's too young now. And people have said Ilhan Omar, who I also love, Ilhan Omar, because of the stupid U.S. Constitution rule, which is a stupid rule, I think, because she's not born in the U.S., she wasn't born an American citizen, she can't be president, which again is a stupid rule. It's stupid. Now, a couple super chats here. Let me... We have David. David says, "Here's for your humility. Your humility, Christo, is a mensch." David, thank you so much for the support. Very much appreciate it. And Rio, thank you so much as well for the support. I don't see a question. If you do have one, let me know. I'll do the best to answer it. But thank you so much. $35 by inauguration day. I guess that makes sense, Dan. In any case, she will be old enough. Now, just because she can doesn't mean she will. But, I had to look this up myself because it's cutting it close. But she'll just be barely by a few weeks or a few months be old enough to run. So, yeah, that's the weird thing is it's that you gotta be born a U.S. citizen, I think. Like, anybody born on U.S. soil is a citizen. But you can still be a citizen if you're born other places. I'm not exactly sure how it works. I know, for instance, John McCain was born in Panama, technically. But he was from birth an American citizen. And I think that's what it is. I just think anybody should be able to be president. Like here in Canada... Again, I'm not one of these. I'm not a snobby Canadian that thinks we're better than you. But one of the things we are better on is that we don't have any BS rules about who can or can't be prime minister. Anybody can be prime minister as long as they're 18, because that's the voting age in Canada. They can be 18 and have to be voting eligible. Basically, you have to be a citizen of the country. If you meet those two requirements, you're in. So there's none of this. You have to be born an American or Canadian citizen, and you have to be at least 35 or whatever it is. Now, our youngest prime minister ever has only been 39, but hypothetically we could have a younger one. Dan says, will Canada do like Barbados and remove the Queen declaring itself as a republic? No, probably not. I'm not an expert on Barbados's constitution and their political structure, but it's a smaller country than Canada, and I wonder if amending their constitution is easier, right? So just for those who don't understand the politics of this in Canada, most Canadians, I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Canadians, just plainly give no fucks about the monarchy. And when I say that, I mean there's a relatively few amount of people that love the monarchy, like legit. They call themselves monarchists. And then you have a few people that are rabid Republicans. They want to, not Republican as in Donald Trump, but Republican as in they believe that Canada needs to become a republic, aka have no more queen or monarch. And the most Canadians don't care. Most Canadians don't care. They just don't care. Maybe they lean towards liking the monarch. Maybe they lean towards against it. But, no one runs an election in Canada on, we're going to ban the Queen. No one does that. Especially as long as Queen Elizabeth is in charge. Because people like her as an individual. She's been queen for so long, etc. So there's that. It's it doesn't, yeah, exactly. It's symbolic. Who cares? That's a lot of people's mind. Now, you might say the symbolism of it is it symbolizes that we're ruled by a theocratic dictatorship, basically, ordained by God. Our queen is chosen by God, hoisted upon us by our Lord and Savior, who his son, Jesus Christ, came to the world to save us. And in Canada, that means technically to be Canada's head of state, you must also be a member of the Church of England, and you must never have married a Catholic. Keeping in mind, Canada has a significant Catholic population. It also means that, in essence, the monarchy is obviously almost entirely white, and we saw what happened when Prince Harry married a woman of color and how poorly she was treated in Britain. So it's also saying that our head of state must be white. Again, in Canada, our head of state is not the Prime Minister. It is the Queen, represented by a Governor General. So there's a lot of symbolism that bothers people. And I don't want to detract from that. Christo, I am not a monarchist. I am not. If I could make the decision and I just had unlimited political capital to spend, I'd probably get rid of the monarchy. In fact, I would get rid of it. Now, if I became prime minister and I had to make decisions about what am I going to do to make this country better, I wouldn't even think of the monarchy. It wouldn't even be on my list of 30, 40, 50 priorities. Just wouldn't be. Wouldn't be. Got other more important things to deal with. So, there's that, right? But then you have to go into the politics of it. Now, in Canada, there's two types of constitutional amendments. There's standard ones and there's fundamental ones. And so to make any amendment to the Constitution, you need 7 of the 10 provinces to agree, and those 7 of the 10 provinces have to together add up to 50% plus 1 of the population. So, basically you need 70% of the provinces, and for them to add up to 50% of the population or more. Meaning you need at least 1 of Ontario and Quebec, and then likely 6 more provinces to get it done. That's what you need. And so you have to start looking, is it going to happen? Are the legislatures of those provinces, because it's not a popular vote necessarily, it's a legislative thing, will they vote for it? And I don't know if that will happen. But fundamentally, there are certain changes, and this goes to Chase's question. Would you also abolish the Senate? I probably would, or I would at least find some way to make it actually meaningful. Maybe give it entirely to Indigenous people. For instance, I've seen that bandied about. Obviously, we'd have to think about it, because that's a big change, but giving it entirely to Indigenous people would be very interesting, requiring essentially Indigenous consent on every piece of legislation. That could be something. It's better than what we have now, I'll tell you that. But I would say that, in essence, changing the monarchy or the Senate requires unanimity. So it requires all 10 provinces' legislatures, right, to vote in favor of abolishing the monarchy, and then the federal government as well, I believe. It's probably not going to happen. That's like a constitutional amendment in the United States requiring all 50 states agree. Literally all 50. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Right? There'll always be a couple holdouts. Right? So, we're not getting rid of the monarchy in Canada. It's not happening. We're not getting rid of the Senate. It's not happening. Major changes like that require essentially unanimity under our Constitution. So, other things with our Senate, you could keep it regional. Maybe if you want to keep it, make one body first past the post, one body proportional. Who knows? There's other things you can do. To reform the Senate, I believe it only requires 750, but the nature of the reform would likely determine whether it requires the 750 rule or requires unanimity. Small reforms to it likely only require 750. Overhauling it might require unanimity. Joseph says fewer than 50 days until the election. Shudders. Yeah, I mean, it's simultaneously taking forever and also flying at the speed of light. It's weird, right? Yeah, the election's super close. It's less than 2 months away now, right? Because it's like, we got 2 weeks of September left, and then October, and then it's like November 3rd or whatever it is, where bam, it's the election. So we are right there. We are right there. It's really the final stretch. That's where we are. Rio says, there's a book on your shelf, on your top left beside your head, Toronto Poor. Would you recommend it? Sorry for being off topic. I am considering that book. Rio, no, not a problem. If you guys ever want book recommendations, just ask. Just ask. I mean, I might not have read it in some cases, but I've read all of these ones, basically. Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's a long book. Like, if you could tell by, like, the length of it, it's a very long book, but it's a good broad history of the poor in Toronto. And it's a sort of unique history that we don't often get, because a lot of history on class focuses on the working class. And the poor are part of the working class, at least under my definition. But this focuses specifically on poor people. People that are often, even in relation to other working class people, unemployed, very precarious, struggling with homelessness, and basic needs. Whereas, say, a lot of labor histories, they focus on working class people, but maybe working class people that have a certain segment or a certain element of privilege and stability by virtue of the fact that they're in unions, by virtue of the fact that they are quote-unquote skilled workers, and it's a fundamentally different history. So this is great, and it's good because it's done by Brian Palmer, who is a very accomplished, I believe he's just recently retired, very accomplished labor historian, and then also Gaetan Heroux, who is a on-the-ground activist, I think with OCAP, I believe, the Ontario Coalition Against Poverty. I believe that's who he's with. And so it's a good collaboration between someone that has the academic background, but then someone who has a lived experience as an activist among the Toronto poor. And so it's really good. It's really good. But again, it's super long, so it might take you a while to get through. So keep that in mind as well. Geo says, Biden not organizing in any state, all digital. I mean, that's what I've seen. I get that. See, I'm torn on this, because obviously you want people to be safe. You want people to be safe with COVID and what have you. But I do have worries about that, right? I do have worries about this strategy. That you're not knocking on doors. You're not really putting up signs. He's not setting up satellite offices. And I do worry. Now, if the polls are right and he's leading by 10, it's not going to matter. But if it ends up being a 3 or 4 point lead, then certainly I could see knocking on doors making a difference. Like, there's a reason why politicians and their volunteers knock on doors. It's not just to do it. Like, it's hard work and it's inefficient. Like, you knock on doors, most of the time people aren't there. People don't want to talk to you. Whatever. It's super hard work, especially in a summer election. Like, it's hot, right? But we do it because it works. And so I think there is a chance that there are going to be some voters who, for whatever reason, even if they understand that COVID is a special circumstance, will be like, well, look, 3 times somebody from the Trump campaign since over 2020 knocked on my door. No times did somebody from the Biden campaign. That matters to me. Looks like Trump and his people seem to care more about me than Biden. Don't forget, there are also parts of the country where internet access isn't that great. And there are certain people who don't have good internet even where there is internet. Right? Like, because they're poor or what have you. And I'm not necessarily saying that, like, Trump is going to win all these people. I think more likely it's that these people will be unlikely to turn out if they haven't been directly reached out to. And if Trump's not doing it because he doesn't care about poor voters in the urban centers. And Biden's not doing it because his all-digital strategy isn't getting to people that don't have reliable high-speed internet or what have you. Then these voters are just going to sit on the bench when they likely, if they did vote, would be Biden voters, right? So I am worried about that. I do worry about that. So, you know, I don't know how that's going to go down. I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned. And I don't think it has to be all or nothing. I think you can do some traditional campaigning in a safe way. Maybe not everywhere. Maybe not in dense urban centers. But, like, in smaller cities, you certainly could. You can have people knock on doors. You can knock on a door. People can wear masks. They can knock on the door and they could, as soon as they knock, they could pull back 6 feet. They can talk to people on their sidewalks. They can set up tables in areas and set the table up, say 6 feet away from the sidewalk and ask people to talk to them from a distance. It's not all or nothing. So I do worry about Biden's strategy. I do worry about it a lot. Shays asks, have you read The Meritocracy Trap by Yale law professor Daniel Markowitz? I haven't, actually, but it sounds like it's an interesting... I Google searched it, and apparently he wrote an article, like an article-length version for The Atlantic. Wait, was this for The Atlantic? Yeah. In 2019 about how meritocracy may not be the ideal you want to base your society on. And so it'll be interesting. Here's the teaser for it. It says, how life becomes an endless, terrible competition. I'll drop the link in the description so everyone else can read it. Meritocracy prizes achievement above all else, making everyone, even the rich, miserable. Maybe there's a way out. So that's really interesting. Because, I mean, my instinct is I support merit in a sense, right? I definitely believe that many things, maybe even most things, should just be available to everyone on the basis of the fact that they are human. But I do believe, everyone has meritocracy. Here on YouTube even, I want to make videos and I want to succeed based on my videos being good and people liking it. And, things like that, right? Like, everyone has competitiveness within them. Even in socialist societies, they have competition, right? It's just the way it is. But it would be very interesting to see, to question the value of meritocracy. So I'm definitely check that out. I'll read that tonight, actually. Dafrock says, if I watch anime, consider Psychopaths. It's a procedural show following a rookie who works for the Sybil system, which governs Japanese society based on mental stability. That'll be really interesting, Dafrox. I haven't watched anime in a long time. I watched it a lot as a kid. I watched a lot of Japanese, with Dragon Ball, Sailor Moon, Samurai Pizza Cats, which I don't know if that's anime or not. I do remember that being really fun. Pokemon, obviously. I remember watching all these shows on, kids' TV, right? But as an adult, I haven't really watched a whole lot of anime. I do watch animated, The Simpsons and shows like that, right? But, anime, not so much. Maybe I'll check that out. Yeah, that's the thing. Most of the animated shows I watch are comedies. Sometimes they're a bit darker, but The Simpsons is comedy, Family Guy's comedy, things like that, right? I've never really watched an animated show that was like a drama that I can think of, at least. I'm not sure, personally. I mean, the polls are going to be tricky to follow, guys. Like, people having debates here. Not all polls are the same. Not all polls are equal. A few things you can do is to look at aggregates. And again, aggregates aren't always right, but it's better than just going through a roller coaster and looking at like every individual poll and then seeing a poll that has Biden winning by 10 and then has a poll that has them tied. And then you have a poll where Biden's winning Wisconsin by 10 and then one where he's losing it by 2 or whatever. Like there's lots you can do beyond that. I would say one thing I look at is the RCP average. And the RCP average, right now, let me drop a link here so you guys can see it. The RCP average, let me see. Politics polls. All right. So the RCP average right now is a little bit more narrow than it was before, but not so much. Biden is still leading by 6 points, basically, nationally. Right? Let me throw the link in the description here. So he's leading by 6 points. That's not too bad. That's not too bad. And he's led in basically every poll except for one, which is Rasmussen, and it tends to lean Republican. Now, there's nothing wrong with pollsters having leans as long as those leans are consistent, but it is good to know about it because you can factor that in. So, for instance, like I'm just going to read over the polls here. It's been pretty. Biden +6, Biden +7, Biden +5, Biden +7, Biden +5, Biden +6, Biden +9, Trump +1, Biden +9, averaging out to over polls over the last 2 weeks, basically. Biden about +6, on average 49 to 43. It would be very difficult, even with the Electoral College, for Biden to lose the election up 5.9. Again, remember that Clinton-Trump, right? Clinton-Trump okay, Clinton-Trump polls. Yeah. Okay. Clinton-Trump polls. Clinton-Trump polls were tighter in the final few days before the election. On average, she only led by 3.2 and then ended up winning by 2.1. So, she bled about 1%, or say about a third of the vote she had, a third of her lead. If Biden was to bleed his lead by a similar amount and go from, say, a 6-point lead down to a 4 or even 3-point lead, he might be fine. That's a whole extra % more than Clinton. Clinton led by 2.1 and ended up losing the election, but she only needed about 70,000 more votes in the right places. If Biden wins by 4%, which is effectively double Clinton's win, right? Double Clinton's win, then she's very likely to win. Biden's very likely to win. Very likely to win. People asking my view on the New Brunswick election. I mean, we talked a little bit about it. Obviously, the NDP result was a bit disappointing, although Kate Grogan did really good in Quispamsis against the provincial leader, and she generated a whole bunch of buzz. If she wants to be, maybe she could take a shot at being the leader next. She would certainly have some time to rebuild because it's a majority government for the Conservatives, so there likely won't be an election for 4 years or so, give or take. You know, the Green, the Green Party in the PA is like a anti-Francophone party, like right-wing party. They both held their own. There was always a risk for those parties that they would lose some of their seats, but they largely held their own. Really, it was a liberal to conservative swing, that the liberals held on to their Francophone base, but that they just lost a lot of marginal seats to the conservatives. And that's what it was. Like, the election was almost entirely the Liberals losing a few seats to the Conservatives, and the Conservatives went from a strong minority to a majority government. I mean, ideologically, I mean, it's not great. You don't want Conservatives winning. But New Brunswick Liberals are not even particularly progressive even for other Liberals. So I don't even know how massive the ideological gap would have been between Vickers and Blaine Higgs. So I don't know. It is what it is. Maritime Conservatives are not as rabid as West Coast Conservatives. Let's put it that way. Like, the PEI is a conservative government right now, but like they're not rabid conservatives, right? Like, PEI, like, you barely can tell the difference between PEI when it's being run by a liberal or a conservative government. You basically can't tell. So, DeJoy should definitely be impeached. The guy is very clearly trying to mess with the postal system to help Trump. One, to help Trump win the election, and two, to make the post office look bad to justify privatizing it. 100%. 100%. I mean, I've done videos on this where, like, you know, we've talked about how he basically, when he was just in the private sector, he would force his staff basically to donate to the Republicans. And then all these people that worked at his company on the same day to the same candidate for the same amount would all be donating $1,200 or whatever to the Tom Tillis, the GOP senator from the state in question. I forget which state it is. I think it's North Carolina. I don't know. And yeah, he's very clearly somebody that has broken electoral law for the Republican Party. There's no reason why he wouldn't break electoral law as Postmaster General. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, he needs to be impeached. Like, look, like, it's difficult, right? Because you can impeach him, he's not going to get removed. Republicans aren't going to do it in the Senate, but, you know, symbolism can have value. Read Black Marxism by Cedric J. Robinson. Gio, thanks for that recommendation. I believe I've at least read part of that book. I've read part of that book, and it's very good. So yeah, that's a good recommendation. Hammer and Hoe is a really good history book that talks about, like, the intersection of black workers and communists in the South, and I think that's also a really good book. Like, I think we, like, at a time where we need to build, like, a multiracial socialist movement, I think these works are important. Idiocracy is a good documentation, very accurate. See, look, Idiocracy it's a problematic movie because it's basically calling for eugenics, right? Like, the argument in the movie is like what's wrong in society is poor people are having too many babies and rich people aren't having enough babies. And I know they don't make it racial in that movie, explicitly at least. But I think very clearly the argument is, you know, the way to stop idiocracy is to make sure the right people have babies and the wrong people don't. And you know what that could lead to? Is forced vasectomies or hysterectomies. In ISIS case, hysterectomies against people that are deemed inferior. So I don't like the logical conclusion of idiocracy. I don't necessarily buy it. Look, here's the deal. Despite the fact that highly educated women have less babies than lower educated women because for a variety of reasons. One, they often want fewer children. Also, because of their education, they start having babies later, which gives them less time to have as many babies. Despite that, the Flynn effect is very clear. And the Flynn effect is basically a study that every generation is getting smarter. We are smarter than we've ever been. My son is going to be way smarter than me. And his generation is going to be smarter. Like, it's so if anything, for a variety of factors, intelligence has increased as birth rates among desirable people have fallen. Right? I don't know. Yeah, and Dan makes a good point. If, to the extent that you get an idiocracy, it's not going to be because the wrong people are having babies. It's going to be because of massive inequality. It's going to be because of deteriorating public education. It's going to be because of a lack of basic social necessities. It's going to be because of mass disinformation and misinformation, including from people like the president, right? Like, so to the extent that you can get an idiocracy, I don't see genetics as like how that happens, right? Like, I don't know. Like, maybe somebody can make a different argument, but from my perspective, I think it's very clearly going to be driven, insofar as it would exist at all, by like the breakdowns we're envisioning in society right now. Okay, I'm just going to grab a quick drink of water. I'll be right back, guys. Just one sec. Yeah. Philip says the DNC really messed up with stacking everything against Bernie, the only candidate funded by regular people. I mean, yeah. I mean, well, so to be fair, some other candidates had most of their donations come from regular people. Andrew Yang, who I've disagreed with on a lot of issues, did get most of his money from regular people. You know, like, there were other candidates, but in terms of, like, the candidates that really had a shot at winning, yeah, it was basically Bernie. It was basically Bernie. And, you know, what I think it was they had one main goal. They wanted to stop Bernie. I also believe they would have done this to Warren too. And I know and I've made videos very critical of Warren. You guys know that. I made a bunch of them around the time she tried to sabotage Bernie. But I do think they would have tried to kibosh her as well. But basically they were like, look, we want any neoliberal. We want, whether it's Beto or whether it's Pete or whether it's Kamala or whether it's Cory or whoever, we just want one of those people. And I honestly think they didn't necessarily want Biden. The party didn't necessarily have a clear favorite like they did in 2016, where it was stop Bernie, but it was also like everyone in the establishment thought it was Hillary's turn. Like it was her turn, right? Like she had earned it by losing in 2008, whatever. Like it was her turn. This time it was like they didn't want Bernie. They probably didn't want Warren. And then they were like, everyone else could do. Like again, they probably didn't really want Tulsi, I guess, either, probably. But like she really didn't have a chance. And so they kind of got stuck with Biden. Yeah, Warren, I don't know if I would classify Warren as a neoliberal in the way that, say, Biden is. And I definitely don't think Warren is as close to Bernie as people suggest she is. But the reality is that the corporate Democrats think she's left-wing. Even if she isn't, they think she is. And so they worry about her, like, wealth tax proposal, for instance. Because it was very similar to Bernie's, her wealth tax proposal. And so, like, the rich people don't like paying their taxes. And so they wouldn't have wanted Warren in either. And so they got stuck with Biden. Here's what happened. Going into the race, there was basically two lanes. There was the moderate lane and the progressive lane. And what happened was that young progressive black people were always with Bernie like they were in 2016. But the core black leadership, moderate, wealthy, middle class black people, the people like Jim Clyburn and those like them, they were with Biden and they never budged from Biden. And so that never gave Cory Booker or Kamala Harris the edge to stay in the race, which is why the two African Americans running basically went out really early. Neither of them made it to the actual election. And so Biden consolidated the black leadership class. Again, not young progressive black people, but the black people that matter in South Carolina. And then on the other side, you had Bernie that was able to monopolize young people like he did in 2016, and also Latinos, and also the progressive group. And that didn't leave much room for Liz Warren. And so what ended up happening is you go to Super Tuesday, you go to Iowa, for instance, and the Democratic Party is kind of stuck, right? Because by that point, they're young, dynamic neoliberals, the ones they thought had a shot, Beto, Kamala, and Cory Booker, who, again, everything aside, they don't have dementia, right? You know what I mean? You could say that, right? They're young and able. You know what I mean? Right? No, they never did, Craig, and that's exactly the problem. Biden, from the very beginning, monopolized it. He monopolized support of black people. It was only for a while, right before South Carolina, that Bernie was polling equal to Biden among black polling. And well ahead of him in racialized voting broadly because of his massive support among Latino voters, right? And Middle Eastern Americans and stuff. Bernie did very well among Arab Americans, for instance. And so you get to Iowa and they're trapped. You got Biden, who's literally he's on his last leg, physically and mentally. You have Pete Buttigieg, who has a good Iowa. He tries to steal it, but I don't think he wins Iowa, but he has a good Iowa. And you have Amy Klobuchar, who does decently in Iowa. And that's who you have left. You have Warren, who's basically done by that point. She stays in to screw Bernie probably, or maybe for her own ego, maybe both. But then you really have three people left. And then you have Bloomberg, but Bloomberg's not jumped in yet. So you have Biden, who literally isn't there. He's literally not there every day. You have Klobuchar and Buttigieg, who are winning significant amounts of votes. They are beating Biden in these states. Again, both of them easily beat Biden in New Hampshire. But both Buttigieg and Klobuchar effectively polled at zero among non-white people. Not just black voters, but all voters. So Bernie is doing well with black voters, and he's doing very well with other racialized voters. Biden is doing very well with black voters, and he's doing okay with other minorities. And Buttigieg and Klobuchar did very well among certain segments of the white voters, but they were going to stop mattering in Nevada and in South Carolina. And so they kind of got stuck. And then there was Bloomberg maybe jumping in to split the neoliberal vote too. And he was getting a lot of support from the black leadership class. Remember, Stacey Abrams basically became a Bloomberg girl. And so what happened was they were left with Biden, and he was the only option. I don't think they wanted him. Again, I don't think the party establishment, if you go back to the summer of 2019, let me know, what do you guys think? The party establishment in the summer of 2019, if they could have picked a candidate, who do you think they would have picked? Who do you think? It's not Bernie. And it's not Warren. And I don't think it's Biden, though. I think, like, if they could pick their candidate, who do you think they pick? I'm interested to see what people think. Like, I don't know. But I don't think it's Biden. Yeah, I think it was Kamala. I think it was Kamala or maybe Cory Booker. Beto O'Rourke, I think a lot of people thought it could have been Beto. I think a lot of people wanted Beto because they were pushing Beto hard. He's from Texas. He got all of that. They definitely didn't want Warren. Like, I know, like, those of us on the left, we know she's not really with us a lot, but, like, let's be real. They didn't want Warren. The party does not want Warren. There's no way. There's no way. Yeah. I don't think they wanted Pete yet. I think they're grooming Pete so he can jack up bread prices in 2028 or whatever. I think Pete's too young. He definitely got a push, but I think the whole push was to legitimize Pete, not to push him into winning yet. I think it was Beto, Kamala, or Cory. That's who they wanted. And when Biden won, they knew they had to go with a person of color, and they knew it was good to go with a black woman given the pressures from a lot of activists. And I don't think it was a wrong decision. I think it was probably right to pick a woman of color. I think Bernie, for instance, should have definitely done the same thing. He should have picked a woman of color to be his vice president. 100%. But I think they got stuck. They got stuck, man. And yeah, I think they were happy to get Harris as VP because it's one of the people they wanted. But, you know, the people they wanted flamed out, either because, like, they couldn't build a base or because they sucked or both. Yeah. Maybe they would have wanted Julian Castro. I don't know. Maybe not even him. But, like, yeah, I don't know. Tom says LGBT CIA Pete Buttigieg. Oh, yeah. Gillibrand. See, the problem with Gillibrand, and she's a neoliberal hack, but because she took a stand on Franken before a lot of people did, a lot of people in the party still hate her for that. They, like, blame her for Al Franken being a creepy guy, right? And so I think a lot of people still blame her for that. And it's one of the reasons she didn't take off, right? Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. That's my view. So when it's like they picked somebody bad, it's like I don't think they wanted Biden this time. I don't think they did, but they got him. Because at the end of the day, when the chips were down, the only person that was going to be able to stop Bernie on Super Tuesday was Biden. Like, and that's what the polls indicated. Now, they did a bunch of polling. I think it was either just before South Carolina, Nevada, or after it. And they did a bunch of hypothetical polls. Bernie versus one particular candidate. And it was Bernie, the only two that were close to Bernie were Bernie versus Warren and Bernie versus Biden. In both of those cases, Bernie led, but only by a few points. So it's like, I think they got stuck there with Biden as the only real option to stop Bernie. People asking me to do a video about MEC. That's the co-op that's basically selling itself to a corporation. I mean, like, I don't know if that's a video that's up my alley. Again, when I make video, again, there's a bunch of things I have to consider. I have to consider what people are gonna watch. I have to consider, like, what options I have in the day, and then also, like, because I as I noted earlier, I don't have a whole bunch of time until my son goes back to daycare. It's like I only have time to make 2 videos today or whatever it is. I have to make those videos count if I want to generate enough views to make the channel viable. And these are all things I really have to consider. Again, this is one of the reasons why I want to get back into writing a little bit more and really start actually launching this Canadian podcast that I've been working on the side for a little bit. Like to give spaces for that other kind of content. Because basically, like, even during the Canadian election, I wasn't generating enough views on Canadian politics to do it full time and actually make the channel viable. Right? And that's just a reality. Like, to put it in perspective, in the last 3 weeks, I've got more views than I did in the entire first year of the channel. Right? Like, it's not comparable, right? Right? And so it's like, it's something I have to look at. Like, you know, I have to look at what people want to watch. And so I do want to do more and as I've noted, I do every once in a while, and I've done various interviews with NDP MPs, and I'm always looking to do more CanCon interviews, and these will be things that I continue to do. And that's why I want to launch a podcast, and that's why I want to get back into my writing, because I feel like that's a better outlet. And that's something where, like, frankly, if I have to look, like, I have a family and stuff, and, like, I have to look at, like, making a living so I can spend time with my family and do these sorts of things, right? And the thing with writing is, if I write an article about Canadian stuff, I can get paid for it. If I make a YouTube video on Canadian topics and it gets 400 views, then effectively I've done all that work and I don't earn anything from it. And so I know this sounds déclassé to talk about, like, earning money, but, like, you know, I have to, if I've transitioned into doing this effectively full time. I have to start thinking it also as a job, right? Leslie with the super chat with what looks to be a lemon that has grown a humanoid body, hugging what looks to be. Is that a rounder than usual lime of an infant variety? Regardless, it's adorable, and thank you for the support, Leslie. Sean asks, what am I expecting and what do I'm hoping and are expecting to see from Trudeau's throne speech and Singh's negotiation to prop up the government? I mean, I'm not holding out a lot of hope for Trudeau's throne speech. One, because I don't trust him. He's a lying SOB. But also, as you might have been seeing in the media, there's been a lot of discussion about how Trudeau has not really been reaching out to the opposition parties, which tells me that he's actually not doing a lot of the work you need to do. In a minority government, you don't just propose a throne speech without discourse, because you need your throne speech to get support of at least, in this parliament, one other major party. Either the Bloc or the Conservatives or the NDP, one of those three has to support your throne speech. And so, if they were really sincere about putting forward an actual throne speech that was going to meet the needs of Canadians, at least in part, then they would be meeting with the opposition leaders. They would have already started that. To build a throne speech that has at least enough in there to get one of those three parties to vote for it. So I don't know. You might have some half-assed basic income, which they definitely will not end up doing. You'll probably see some kind of continued COVID relief, but I'm not expecting much. In terms of Singh, I think he needs to demand a continuation of COVID relief either through the CERB and an expansion of it. I think he should demand a major national program like childcare or dental care. Dental care might be a good one to push for right now, because with so many people out of work, it's really exposing the limitations of having people get their health care or their dental and pharmaceutical coverage through their employer. So pharmacare or dental care would be a key one for me. A lot of people have been talking about pushing for electoral reform as part of a deal. Canadians support it, basically 3/4 of Canadians, but it's going to be hard to make electoral reform part of a deal making in the context of a pandemic where people have more immediate material needs, I think Singh might be better placed to focus on healthcare, dental care, childcare, and continuing the CRB and basic income, things like that. And then hammer on electoral reform during an actual election if it comes. David says, plug my articles in writing whenever. I haven't been doing much writing lately, but certainly I will. Those are the kind of things that I do actually while I'm here, while I'm on this topic. I'll drop a link to the Discord. Most of you are probably members of the Discord now, or like, you tell me this every week and I don't want to join. But here's the Discord. If I do things like writing and stuff, I share it on Facebook, on Twitter, on the Discord, things like that. I haven't done as much again lately, but I'm looking to write more. I'd like to write for places like Passage and Canadian Dimension, and every once in a while I think of potential articles for the Washington Post where I've written a little bit. But they get so many pitches that most of the time you send a pitch, you don't hear back. So I hope to write for them again sometime soon. It's always a good source. Ironic as it is, one of the best places to get good Canadian opinion is not from Canada's own newspapers, which largely suck. The Washington Post, again, as much as I'm loath to praise Bezos' paper, does publish, like Nora Loretto, David Moskrop. It's published myself before, Andre Dumise. You can get some good opinion there from WAPO from the left, which is rare. Joseph says, please describe more super chat stickers. Whenever I get one, I will do my absolute best to describe it. Brandon says, the Humanist Report letting me run his show for a couple days helped you a lot. Well, I just did one video for him, actually. What happened was at the time his father passed away, and it was right around Super Tuesday, and he wasn't in the right frame of mind, obviously, to make a video, but he wanted to have something up on his channel, so he asked me to do it, and he knew that we basically have similar ideological views and, just had a similar view of what Super Tuesday was, which was a disappointment, but not necessarily the end of Bernie. It ended up being the last chance Bernie had, looking back on it, but, like disappointed, but it's not over yet. And I put that up, and that did bring in a good chunk of subscribers to the channel. Yeah, that was very good. That was very gracious of Mike to have me on his channel. People asking what a throne speech is. Yeah, it's like a State of the Union, but it has added pressure. So basically, the government, the current government, at the start of every parliament, not every election even, but every year basically within a parliament, will put a speech out that will have a broad list of priorities for the coming session, right? By the government. And it will be, it's weird. It's read by the Governor General, or in England, the Queen herself reads it, which is why it's called the throne speech, because the Queen reads it literally from a throne. But it's not written by her, it's written by the government. But at the beginning of every parliament, the MPs vote on that throne speech, whether to accept it or reject it, based on what's in it. Now, there are times in Canada where one party has a majority government. And what that means is they have over half the seats on their own. Like, we have 338 seats, basically. But basically, you need 170 seats for a majority in Canada then, right? So if your party has 180 seats, then your throne speech is basically a formality because you have more votes than the other parties combined. But in this parliament, there's actually more opposition MPs than Liberal MPs, meaning the Liberals always need at least one other party to support them to pass any legislation in this parliament. And if those other parties unite to oppose this throne speech, the government falls. The government falls, and the governor general will have two choices. One, ask the conservative leader if he can get the support of the House to form a government, or two, dissolve parliament and call an election, likely 60 days from that point, or so, give or take. And that's basically how it works. So it's like a State of the Union, but if it was done by the Speaker of the House, and if the speech was defeated, it would immediately lead to another election of the entire House. Leslie said, my son is having brain surgery next weekend, Wednesday, so I will miss your stream. I'm sending super sticker for next week. Thanks. Take care. Leslie, thank you so much for the support. Very much appreciate it. And do give your son my best wishes. And I know everyone else is going to talk about to send best wishes. And do give us an update when you have one and when you're ready to do so. And we wish him all the best. Thank you, Leslie, so much. Justin says, unfiltered thoughts on Chantal Hébert. I mean, I think she's sort of a liberal hack, like a small and big L liberal hack. I don't always disagree with her opinions, and I think sometimes she gives interesting ones, but I sort of think she's overrated as a political commentator. I get why she's so prominent. She can be a voice of Franco-Ontarians, and she's on Quebec media, and she's in national Canadian media. And she's a writer at the Star. I get that she has such depth and breadth. I don't think she's necessarily saying anything that profound. And again, like, she wrote a piece about how this Trudeau Liberal Parliament might move leftward, but nowhere mentions at all either Jagmeet Singh or the NDP in the entire piece and the role they might play in that. Even to dismiss them, even to say, I don't think the NDP matters. She doesn't even do that. So clearly she's writing columns just ignoring the NDP. So I'm not a huge fan. Samantha, at least right now, Brianna hasn't gotten that link yet. She's out of town right now, as I noted at the beginning of the stream. I'll try to remember and send her a reminder about that to see if we can get that interview with her and Jagmeet. That'll be really good. Because I do want to share that with you. You know, whether I could put it up here on the channel. I don't know if I'll be able to do that because it's the Steelworkers thing, but maybe we can upload it on Facebook or Twitter or something and share it with everybody. Yeah, and in some ways, the throne... Yeah, Christopher, I know you're sort of joking, but you're actually telling the truth, where the throne speech is, in a sense, sort of like an infomercial. Because it's like, there's no... You're not actually committing to anything. It's not like the throne speech locks you into something. It's not like because you say, I'm going to do something in the throne speech, you must do it in that parliament. You don't have to do it. And it's not like if you can exclude something from the throne speech, you could still do it, like later, like even right away. So it is, in a sense, this pomp and circumstance going back to the Middle Ages in England, right? Because our system is based off the British system. But it does still have it has a lot of importance in a minority government, because the throne speech does have to be able to pass. More important would be the budget. Every year, the government has to propose a budget. And again, in a minority government, the budget has to be voted on by parliamentarians. And again, if that gets rejected by a parliament, it will dissolve the government. John Barlett says, hey, do you hear about Brianna Joy Gray's settlement tour thoughts? I haven't heard about that in particular. Let me just give that a quick Google. Is she, like... Let me see. I know she just started a new podcast, and not to brag, but she does follow me on Twitter, which of course I am very, very happy to see. Let me see if I can... Yeah, I'm like, John, I'm not getting a whole lot. Maybe like give me a follow up on this, because I'm not getting a whole lot coming up even on my like Twitter feed or what have you. So let me know about that, because I'm not sure. It sounds interesting. I don't know what it is though. Craig. Yeah, we talked about a bit about the NB election. Yeah, my basic views are like, obviously it's disappointing. I wanted the NDP to do better. Um, I would have preferred it not be conservative or even liberal. I would have preferred another minority government. I don't like liberals and conservatives getting majorities. Um, um, oh, okay. Are you talking about the settlement? I don't know about a settlement tour, but we could talk about a bit about the settlement. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second, John. So the I obviously would have preferred a continued minority government. Again, there's not a huge ideological differences between the conservatives and liberals in maritime elections generally, so it's not a disaster like Kenny becoming prime minister. Blaine Higgs sucks, but Kevin Vickers would have sucked as well. The NDP, of course, didn't do as well as I wanted. I think they did the best they could, given the cards they had, in a lot of ways. And they actually generated a lot of buzz on social media, which is incredibly difficult when you're such a small party. I feel bad that Mackenzie, the leader, Thomason, had such a difficult run with it, kind of getting stuck with the job after he was interim leader. But I think he did okay, given what he was given, the position he was in. And we had some like potential future stars, like Kay Grogan, who I think should look at either running for the leadership of the provincial party or maybe seeking a federal riding in New Brunswick, right? I think that some of these people they're all very young candidates. We are in a ton of young candidates in New Brunswick. And I'd like to see them stay involved in politics. Maybe they'll find success municipally in New Brunswick. Maybe they'll find success running as a federal candidate. Maybe they'll find success, again, trying to rebuild the party provincially. But I was happy to see them to run such interesting candidates. Yeah, I'll definitely try to get that Jugmeat interview. I'll definitely try to get that. And I mean, I'd love to have him on this channel too. I'd love to have him on. I've had a few MPs on, and I'd love to have Jugmeat on eventually. That'd be great. I'd love that. So Justin, you say you're getting some lag here. It seems like it was fine just on my feed here, but let me know if that's still an issue. So did I hear about the Breonna Taylor settlement? I did. I mean, as far as I know, I think it's like $12 million. It's one of the biggest settlements ever for like basically wrongful death by police, basically police murdering you, and not having cause to do so, which is important because, like, I mean, look, like, part of justice is taking care of her family, and her family deserves some manner of compensation, but it's not a substitute, it's not a substitute for arresting the cops and charging the cops and giving them a fair trial. They deserve a fair trial, but holding legally accountable the police that murdered Breonna Taylor. It's not a substitute. I don't care if you gave their family $112 million. It's not a substitute. Her life is priceless in the sense that it goes beyond pure economic compensation. And so, I wish her family the best, and I hope that they can use that money to take care of themselves and of the family and of any costs that are related to the passing of Breonna Taylor. And I hope that they can use that money to help people like her in the future. I don't know what their goal is. That's their money, but it's not a substitute for criminal justice. It's not. Because otherwise, it would be like rich people could murder people and just give their families $12 million. And it's like, no, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. Yeah. Well, I mean, Kate Grogan stand. I mean, look, again, it's very challenging for me to make very focused content like that. And I have to look at it. And I also have to think, honestly, there's limitations for somebody running for a provincial office from a small province coming onto my channel. Because that a video like that would have gotten a few hundred views. And there's no guarantee that even a majority of those views would have been from New Brunswick. And so it was far more impactful, I think, to use social media for that, where I certainly did my very best to highlight the work of the candidates during the debates. I've done a lot of retweeting of Kate in particular and her efforts. And one thing I've never done before, I've never done this, unprecedented. I made a donation, a personal donation to the New Brunswick NDP. I've never donated to a provincial a riding or provincial NDP outside of the one I currently live in. Never done that. So it's something I've never done. So while of course you could always do more, I like to think that I did more to help the New Brunswick NDP than I did, for instance, even to help, say, the Manitoba NDP or the Saskatchewan NDP in my way. So I mean, you know, I'd like to do more, and if I get that podcast launched, that might be a good venue to talk to some of these folks. But I don't know. There's nothing more I can say. If you feel I let someone down, I can understand that. Maybe I don't fully agree, but I'm sorry. I'm sorry you feel that way. No, I never used to live in Manitoba. I mean, I used to live in New Brunswick. I grew up in New Brunswick. But what I'm saying is that, like, in New Brunswick, you can make donations to the provincial election even if you don't live in the province. And so I did that, which is something that, and honestly, maybe it's something I should have been doing all along, but I didn't do that in the last provincial election. So I've literally probably never really done more for the New Brunswick NDP than I did in this election since I lived in New Brunswick. And I wasn't super politically involved before I moved out to Ontario, to be honest, right? So yeah, I mean, I'm getting really skeptical that the police are going to get charged. I'm getting really skeptical about that. Like, very, very much so. Because, like, there's just so much time that's passed, and the election's coming, and like, it's going to get, as much as the election has sucked the energy out of a lot of things, it's only going to get worse. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think maybe that's the point of the settlement. Look, we've given you money. What more do you want? And I don't know. I don't agree with it, but that might be what happens. Which is a goddamn tragedy, right? Because she's not getting justice. She's not getting justice. And it's like, it's even more egregious than a lot of the other police murders we've seen. Like, it's even more. It's like they invaded her home, like, just, I don't know. Yeah. I think somebody's trying to start a chant. Look, again, I think the New Brunswick NDP did an admirable job. Like, I don't know if a video on my channel would have made all that much of a difference. And guys, again, like, look, I'm trying my best here. Like, I really am. Like, my son doesn't go to daycare. Brianna has to work mostly 9 to 5, and Brianna's, often works longer hours than that. I make videos when I can. I have to make videos that people will watch. I have to make videos that I can really hone in on, and I'm doing my best. And I don't know what to tell you. I didn't make any videos about the New Brunswick election. It's not like I made a video about the election and I was covering it, and I declined to do that, right? But I don't know. I'm doing my best. John Bartlett says, on a lighter note, would you ever do a call-in stream for your viewers? John, that might be something I would look at. One thing I want to do, again, when I get some more time is set up maybe like a periodic voice chat with some of the patrons at, say, the $10 level, which keeps it relatively small and manageable. But I could also transition that into maybe use it like, I know Vaush and some of the other streamers will basically set up chat rooms where you can basically, he can bring on viewers and guests just like that. And that might be something I would look into, where maybe we could have discussions with some of the people that are patrons, not to be exclusive or anything, but just to limit the amount of trolls that we would get. That people could come on and just ask questions, and we could have discussions. Yeah, I'd be open to that. I'd want to look up like the to make sure I could get the technical part of it right. But that would be something that I think that would be pretty cool. I think. So guys, we're about 10:15 or so, and my voice is starting to go a little bit. I don't know. So I'm probably going to end for tonight. But this was really great. Again, thank you so much for those who showed up and for those who stuck around despite my technical difficulties. Thanks again. Again, for those who are new, we do these every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern time. We usually go to about 10:30, sometimes a little bit later. But that's the regular weekly stream. If you want to support the channel, the best way you can do that is just watch the videos. When people watch the videos, YouTube shows them to more people, which helps the channel grow and succeed. And I know that for a lot of people, especially right now, they don't have a lot of extra money to support people, via Patreon or what have you. So I fully get that. As long as you have the time to watch my videos, you can support me by watching them. If you do want to support the channel, there's links in the description, I believe. I don't know if I have them in these descriptions. Let me check. There's links in the description for my PayPal and my Patreon and all my social medias. Couple things. I did post a video today that didn't get notifications because I had already done 3 in 24 hours or something. So I'm just going to do everyone a favor by posting it here in case you missed it. It's basically Newt Gingrich feeding into the anti-Semitic conspiracies that George Soros is running the entirety of the American left, and even Fox News saying basically you've gone too far and shutting down the conversation. So do check that out. But yeah, I will certainly see you all next week, and as usual, I'll probably have a video or two at least out tomorrow. And we'll see you soon. Thanks again for the support, guys, and I'll see you next week.